you for joining us.
I'm so excited. Today, we're going to talk about the six principles for responsible retreats. This is a really near and dear subject to my heart. So, Sarah, do you want to get us going?
Yep. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us for another edition of the WTA Wellness Travel Talks. Before we get started, just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording, and this recording will be sent out to everybody who has registered. So today's conversation is one that we're especially excited about because retreats continue to be one of the fastest growing segments of wellness tourism. But with that growth comes an opportunity and really a responsibility to establish shared standards that help build trust, elevate professionalism, and support positive experiences for everyone involved. So we'll be talking about the six principles for responsible retreats, a framework developed through the Wellness Tourism Association's Retreat Committee to help strengthen responsible retreat practices across the industry. So we're honored to welcome Sheri Rosenthal. Sheri is the founder of Wanderlust Entrepreneur, CEO of Journeys of the Spirit, and one of the world's leading experts in transformational retreat travel. She has more than 25 years experience designing, leading, teaching, and managing retreats around the world. Through Journey of the Spirit, she's helped plan and manage more than 1,000 retreats globally, and through Wanderlust Entrepreneur, she's trained over 25,000 coaches. Most recently, Sheri's accepted the role as the chair of the Wellness Tourism Association's Retreat Committee, where she has been leading the committee in developing the six principles for responsible retreats, a collaborative initiative designed to help strengthen professionalism, participant well-being, transparency, and trust across the industry. So welcome, Sheri. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm really excited about this presentation. As you said, this is the core of my life's work, and so I'm really excited about this. And I know you've got lots of questions to ask me,
Yes.
so I can't wait to see what you're going to throw at me. And
Great.
hopefully, everyone listening will have some Q&A at the end, and we'll have some participation. And if you guys want to put stuff in the chat. I'm going to be watching the chat while I'm talking. I'm going to do my best to multitask and see
It's
what you
always
guys
challenging.
are thinking and while I'm sharing this information. So thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem. All right. Well, let's kind of start at the beginning. So again, congratulations on becoming the chair of the WTA Retreat Committee. What excited you about stepping into that role?
Well, as I said, what excited me most was actually the opportunity to support an industry that's actually shaped my life for more than 25 years. And I came into the retreat world through my own personal transformation and then went on to lead, plan, manage, and teach retreat leaders for decades. So I've seen retreats from almost every angle, which is unusual as a participant, a retreat leader, a travel professional, because we do retreat management through my travel agency, a business owner, and an educator. And what I know is that retreats can be profoundly meaningful. They can change the way people see themselves, their work, their relationships, their health, their creativity, and their purpose. But I also know that retreats come with tremendous responsibility. So when the opportunity came to chair the WTA Retreat Committee, I saw it as a chance to help bring more clarity, shared language, and professional awareness to a space that is growing so quickly. It's like the Wild West, you guys. So for me, the work is not about making retreats more rigid or corporate. It's about helping the industry mature with integrity so that the transformational promise of retreats is matched by responsible leadership, thoughtful design, safety. You guys need to know that I'm an ex-physician, so safety is really important, transparency and care. So thanks for that question, Sarah.
Yes. So what was happening in the retreat industry that made this feel like the right time now?
Well, basically, Sarah, I mean, retreats have moved from being a niche experience. Like when I think about going on my first retreat, like in 1998, into a much more visible and rapidly growing part of wellness tourism. And as we all know, people are craving connection. They're craving meaning. They're looking for places where they can step away from the intensity of everyday life and reconnect with themselves, their health, their spirituality, their creativity, their leadership, or community. And that's very exciting. But we all know when something grows quickly, there's always the risk that professional practices behind the scenes do not grow at the same pace. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing more people entering the retreat space who may be wonderful teachers or healers, coaches, yoga instructors, wellness practitioners, but they may not yet fully understand what it means to lead people away from home, handle money responsibility, manage risk, and there is a lot of that, communicate transparently, create emotional safety, or respect the communities and environments where the retreats take place. And to be fair, many people don't know what they don't know, right?
Mhm.
So this felt like the right time to say, let's support the growth of this industry before problems become more widespread. Let's create shared language now. Let's help people understand that retreats are beautiful, but they're also serious work that requires preparation, professionalism, and care. Right, Sarah?
Yep, couldn't agree more with you, Sheri.
Mm-hmm.
So why did the committee feel it was important to create shared principles instead of more rules or regulations?
Yeah. Well, we chose principles because the retreat industry is incredibly diverse. So you could have, I don't know, a yoga retreat, a leadership retreat, a meditation retreat, a creative retreat, a grief retreat, a corporate retreat, or a health focused retreat. And they may all have different formats, audiences, risks, and outcomes. So rigid rules could never fit every kind of retreat experience. And the goal was not to police the industry or create barriers for sincere professionals doing good work. Instead, principles give us something more flexible and more useful. Okay, they create a shared framework that different retreat professionals can apply to their own context. And they invite self reflection. That's what we want. They raise awareness, they give the industry common language for what responsible practice looks like without pretending that every retreat should be designed the same way, because it's not true.
Mhm.
Principles are meant to be practical, not punitive, right? They
Yeah.
help us ask better questions like, am I qualified to lead this? Have I considered safety and risk? Am I being transparent? Have I designed this experience thoughtfully? Am I caring for participants emotionally as well as physically? And am I respecting the community, the culture, and the environment where the retreat is taking place? That's the kind of conversation that helps an industry grow with integrity.
Great. Thank you so much. Before we dive into the principles themselves, I think it's important to address something that came up through the process. The word retreat means different things to different people. So why does creating the shared language matter for the future of the retreat industry?
Yeah, it does matter, Sarah. Shared language matters because different people may be using the word retreat while meaning something completely different. And truthfully, everyone's using the word retreat because it's popular. So I've seen people use the word retreat for live events from the stage, from a workshop, to a half day event. I mean, really. So a traveler may think that they're booking a deeply supported, facilitated experience. A hotel may think that offering wellness programs a retreat. A retreat leader may think they're hosting a workshop in a beautiful location, and that's a retreat. A travel advisor may be trying to recommend something without having a clear framework for evaluating the experience. And that creates confusion for the buyer.
Exactly.
So, yeah, when we create shared language, everyone benefits. Travelers having a clearer understanding of what they are booking, advisors having a better sense of what they're recommending, and retreat professionals have a reference point for responsible practice. Venues understand that they may be supporting the retreat, but they're not necessarily the retreat itself. And the broader industry can grow with more consistency, trust, and integrity. So the definitions matter because they help us separate the experience, the professional, and the place,
Mhm.
right? So
Exactly.
that is what we have to understand. The clarity is going to help everyone communicate more honestly and serve the traveler more responsibly.
Yes. Yes. And I can see how it could get very confusing for the consumer and the retreat leaders to have to deal with all of the definitions that people think that they are.
Exactly. And I love the comments you guys are putting in the chat. I am trying to keep an eye on that.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about the state of retreats today. They've obviously become incredibly popular over the last several years. What excites you most about the retreat industry today?
Well, that's a good question. I think most important is that people are looking for travel to actually mean something. I
Mhm.
love that. We don't want to sit on a bus and look at something. I think most people are looking for experiential
Yeah.
something, right? It's no longer enough to simply go somewhere beautiful, have a nice meal, and take a few photos. Again, people are looking for experiences that help them feel more connected, more alive, more clear, more restored, more aligned with who they are. And especially post COVID, they are looking for community. They're looking for personal growth. They're looking for wellness, healing, creativity, leadership, spirituality, and purpose, what I said earlier. That is exactly where retreats can be so powerful. And a well designed retreat brings together so many important elements: the travel, the place, the mythology of the location, facilitation, community, reflection, learning, embodiment, right? Rest, integration. And when those elements are woven together with skill and care, a retreat can become much more than a trip. It can
Mhm.
be a lifetime turning point. It was for me on my first retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz. It literally changed my entire life. And so, what excites me is that the industry is being invited to meet a very real human need. People are hungry for that connection and meeting, and retreats can serve that need beautifully when they are responsibly created and led, right?
Yes. Well, that gets me to my next one on the flip side of that question. What concerns you about the retreat industry
A
today?
lot, a lot, Sarah.
Why we're
So
doing this, right?
exactly. So, what concerns me is the gap between the beauty of the retreat promise and the responsibility required to deliver that promise well. So, retreats are not benign, as I like to say in my medical language. Retreats can look effortless from the outside, a beautiful setting, inspiring copy, nourishing meals, the yoga, ocean views, sacred circles. You guys know that. All that make the experience look gentle and easy. But behind the scenes, responsible retreat leadership is complex because You are asking people to travel away from home. You're collecting significant money in advance. You are making promises, whether explicit or implied, about the type of experience people are going to have. And you may be working with people who are emotionally vulnerable, physically challenged, grieving, burned out, healing, or seeking major life change. And that requires skill. It also requires legal preparation. I can't tell you how many retreat leaders don't have legal forms. And I don't mean these stupid waivers that a lot of you are using. I mean full out death forms, because you are totally responsible for anything that happens to the participant on your retreat, right? Insurance. I would say probably 99% of retreat leaders have no insurance.
Wow.
Okay. And once you leave, like if you are based in the US, you leave the country, there's nothing that covers you other than tour operator insurance. And there's only two companies that sell that, Aon and Berkshire Hathaway, excuse me. So it is really challenging. Other issues, clear communication, risk management. So a lot of them go out of the country. Do they even know where how would they evacuate the country if something happened? Do they know where the nearest hospital is if someone has a heart attack? I'm just saying, right? Um, they need to know how to put appropriate boundaries on the retreat and how not to take people personally. That takes emotional intelligence. All
Yeah.
right. Also, an understanding of scope of practice. What can you do? What can't you do? My concern is that new people are entering. Actually, my concern is not that new people are coming into the industry, because new leaders do bring energy and innovation. My concern is when people enter the industry without realizing the depth of responsibility involved. They have a lack of education. And also, what concerns me is since the pandemic, everyone and their mother is teaching how to run a retreat. And the people who are doing that are people who have run a couple retreats themselves and now feel like they can educate others. They don't even know seller of travel law. They don't know any of this. And they're trying to help other people when they're ignorant themselves.
Yeah.
So this gets the hair on my arm, standing up Brooklyn
Yeah.
style.
I
Yeah.
can imagine. Well, you may have touched on this with the concerns, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing retreat leaders make?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is confusing inspiration with preparation. We get so excited. We want to do this retreat and we have so much love to give, right? I mean, who's running retreats? Mostly heart-based entrepreneurs, right? So we want to help. And so a retreat leader might have a beautiful idea, meaningful topic, a gorgeous venue, and a sincere desire to help people. But that doesn't automatically mean the retreat is responsibly designed or professionally held. Does anyone remember James Ray retreat in Sedona years ago, where he had the several people die on the retreat because they had a sweat lodge and he did not allow people to eat or drink beforehand, right? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. I've been around a long time. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of stuff. So I see, retreat leaders make mistakes like not having the proper contracts, what I just said, not having the proper insurance, not having clear cancellation policies. They don't even understand. They have people sign up for a retreat. On the retreat page, there's no cancellation policy. You're taking money before telling people the cancellation policy. That's illegal. Okay, that's deceptive marketing.
Mhm.
Not understanding local travel requirements like seller of travel issues, in the US and Canada, package travel laws in Europe, not collecting participant health or emergency information. I would say 99.9% retreat leaders do not know what medications their people are on when they're going internationally. You could save someone's life if you knew someone was a diabetic and they went into a coma and you called emergency services. If you told them they were on insulin, they would put a sugar drip there and save that person's life. So no one's thinking about that. No one is teaching about that because they don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Not vetting vendors properly. Like you're having transportation on your retreat. Have you asked the vendor for their insurance policy to know that your vendor is insured? No, they don't, believe me.
Wow.
Another mistake is underpricing or mismanaging money. So retreat leaders sometimes collect participants' deposits and then spend the funds before they've fulfilled the retreat obligations, which can create problems if the retreat is canceled or circumstances change. You can't use that money. It should be like, doesn't have to be in an escrow account, but it should be squirreled away.
Yeah.
I also see leaders overfill the schedule with too much content, too much activity. They forget retreats need spaciousness. Retreat means to go within. If you don't have time for that, you don't have a retreat. It needs integration. It needs time for people to breathe, connect, rest, absorb what's happening. And finally, I see people designing retreats around what they want to teach rather than what their participants need to experience. So a retreat is not simply a curriculum in a pretty place. It is an arc. It's a container. It's a carefully designed journey.
Mhm. Couldn't agree more with you, Sheri. There's so many points that people don't even think about. So what about travelers? What should people be looking for before they book a retreat?
Well, I mean, they have to look beyond the photos and the inspirational language. They should ask, practical questions. So, who's leading the retreat? What's their background? Are they qualified for the experience that they're actually offering? What is included in the price? What's not included in the price? That's just as important. What's the cancellation policy, as I said before? Are the payment terms clear? Is travel insurance recommended or required? I believe it should be required. What kind of physical ability is needed? That needs to be clear. Are there emotional or health considerations? What happens if someone gets sick or injured? Are you hiking somewhere in the middle of nowhere? What if someone breaks a leg? What? What are you going to do? Is
Mhm.
there a clear schedule or at least a clear sense of the retreat flow? So people should also pay attention to how the retreat is communicated. Does the website feel transparent or does it rely mostly on vague promises? Are the expectations clear and reasonable? Does the retreat leader explain who the retreat is for and who it may not be for? And is there a way to ask questions before booking? So a responsible retreat should help the traveler feel informed, not pressured. And beautiful marketing may create interest, but clarity creates trust.
Great. Okay, well, let's dive into the six principles themselves rather than reading through them one by one. We'd love to hear how they come to life in real retreat experiences. So we'll start with the first one, the qualified leadership and facilitation. So what
Mhm.
does being qualified actually mean when it comes to leading retreats?
Okay, well, okay, being qualified doesn't mean every retreat leader needs the same credential or background. That just is not reasonable, right? The retreat industry is diverse. So, retreat professionals could be coaches, therapists, physicians, yoga teachers, meditation teachers, spiritual leaders, educators, artists, authors, speakers, travel professionals, hospitality experts, or wellness practitioners. So, the question is not, does everyone have the same certification? The question is, are they appropriately qualified for what they are offering? So if someone is leading a yoga retreat, do they have the training and experience to teach yoga safely? If someone is facilitating emotional healing work, do they understand trauma boundaries and the scope of that practice? If someone's taking people into remote locations, do they understand the travel safety and logistical responsibilities? And if someone's offering health related guidance, are they licensed or trained appropriately? So being qualified means knowing your own limits. So a responsible retreat leader understands what they are prepared to hold and what they are not prepared to hold. They know when to refer out. They know when to bring in another professional. They don't use the intimacy of the retreat container to practice beyond their scope. So qualification is not just about credentials. It's about competence, integrity, self-awareness, preparation, and responsibility. That's what I would say, Sarah.
Okay. Great. Well, let's go to number two, safety and risk management. Safety isn't always the most exciting topic, but it could be the most important. What should every responsible retreat leader have in place?
Well, as I said before, a basic safety and risk foundation in place before accepting participants. So again, that includes appropriate business structure. I've seen a lot of retreat leaders, they don't even have a business license in their location. Come on, guys, right? Again, insurance, contracts, cancellation policies, emergency contacts. You should have an emergency contact on every participant. Participant health information, as I said before, dietary information, a plan for medical, logistical, emotional, or environmental issues that arise. They should understand the risks associated with the destination, the venue, the activities, the transportation, the food, the climate. I've seen, people take people to Peru. You didn't tell people they were going to be at altitude and have them check in with their doctor to see if they could be at that altitude and maybe have medicine for altitude sickness, like stuff like that. The terrain, the participants they're serving. So all of that. And they should know what emergency resources are available. They should know who's responsible if something happens. And they should have communication systems in place. So a plan for illness, injury, travel delays. I once had I was running a trip to Peru, and my guide got drunk the night before, showed up the next day barefoot, um, dirty, and he
Wow.
couldn't find the tickets to the train to Machu Picchu. Like yeah. Let me tell you guys, I could tell you stories that would make your hair curl.
I bet.
Well, we fixed it. We got new tickets. We got on the train, but you always have to be calm and have a backup plan. What do you do when there's disruptive behavior and you've got a problem child on a retreat, or someone's in emotional distress, or a participant needs to leave early for a reason? So it's not about making retreats fearful. It's about making them more trustworthy. And
Mhm.
safety is one of the most caring and loving things a retreat leader can provide, because it allows participants to relax into the experience. And when people feel like the container is thoughtfully held, they can be more present, more open, and more engaged.
Yes, a lot to think about. Thank you for that, Sheri. Um, so the next principle is transparency and integrity. If someone is looking at a retreat website today, what information should always be clearly communicated?
That's a good question. So, a retreat website should clearly communicate the essential facts that people need to make an informed decision, right? That includes who is leading the retreat, what the retreat is about, who is it for, who it might not be for. I love those sections on a retreat page where you say, this retreat is for you if, and this retreat is not for you if. Um, Where it takes place, don't assume people know geography because I promise you they do not. What is included, as I said, what is not included, the price, payment terms, cancellation policy, travel requirements. I've seen people say fly into the city, but there were two airports and people flew into the wrong city, right? You need to give the three-letter code for the airport. Room options, physical requirements, schedule and general flow, any important health, emotional, cultural, or logistical considerations. I've seen situations where a retreat leader picked a venue where they did not check into the layout of the venue, and they had bathrooms that just had like a curtain instead of a door. I don't know about you guys, but this is probably TMI, but I can't do a pooper if I don't have a door. I can't have a room with a curtain. You know what
Little
I
bit of
mean?
privacy.
I can't do it. So, like, I don't know. It's awareness, right? You guys, I'm being silly right now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The website should be honest about the promise of the retreat, right? There's a difference between saying this retreat is designed to support reflection, renewal, and personal growth versus making exaggerated claims about healing, transformation, or guaranteed outcomes. So, integrity means we communicate the value of the experience without manipulating people's pain, fear, or vulnerability. We don't want to do that. And transparency also helps the leader because when expectations are clear before people book, there is less confusion, less resentment, and fewer mismatched participants later. And believe me, you don't want that on your retreat. So, a good retreat website should not simply inspire people, it should inform them.
Great. Okay, so next we have the next principle is thoughtful design and inclusion. So, what separates a truly transformational retreat from simply planning a great vacation?
Hmm. Okay. Well, in general, I think we can agree that a vacation is usually designed around rest and pleasure, recreation, and enjoyment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a retreat is different because it's designed around an intention, right? So a transformational retreat has a clear purpose and, as I said earlier, a thoughtful arc. It considers where the participants are when they arrive and then what they are being invited to explore and what experiences are going to support that exploration and how the community will be built, where spaciousness is needed, and how the participants are going to integrate what they are learning or experiencing. So, the venue, meals, excursions, practices, workshops, conversations, and rest times should all support the retreat's purpose. Inclusion is also part of thoughtful design. A responsible leader considers who can access the experience, who may feel excluded, what assumptions are being made, what physical, cultural, financial, emotional, or dietary needs may be present, how to communicate honestly about what the retreat can and cannot accommodate. A retreat is not transformational just because it's beautiful. It becomes transformational when the design, the facilitation, the environment, and care all work together to support meaningful change.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to our fifth, respect and care. This principle goes beyond physical safety. Can you talk about creating emotionally safe retreat environments?
Yes. So, from my point of view, emotional safety is essential because retreats often invite people into deeper levels of reflection, sharing, growth, and vulnerability. So, a responsible retreat leader understands that people could arrive carrying stress or grief or burnout, transition, trauma, uncertainty, or just a deep longing for change. So even if the retreat is joyful and uplifting, people can still have tender experiences. So creating emotional safety begins before the retreat even starts. It begins with clear communication about what the retreat is and what it isn't, what the participants can expect, and what level of sharing may be involved, and what level of support will be available. So during the retreat, emotional safety means giving people choice. I've seen a lot of retreats where there is no choice and people are bullied. That's, yeah, that's not good. Um, when you do that, it just ruins the entire retreat and experience for people, obviously. So it means not forcing vulnerability, not pushing people to share publicly if they don't want to, and not using pressure as a facilitation tool, and not confusing emotional intensity with transformation. That's also important. It also means having strong boundaries, confidential confidentiality, my mouth isn't working,
That's
should
okay.
be addressed, right? What happens at the retreat stays at the retreat.
Mhm.
Group agreements should be clear. I always meet with my groups before the retreat and get clear on all of this ahead of time. The leader should know how to manage difficult dynamics when something is beyond their scope. And people should leave a retreat feeling respected, not exposed, and supported, not pressured, invited, not manipulated.
Mhm.
So that to me is what care is like in a retreat environment. So hopefully that helps, Sarah.
Great. Okay, so we have our sixth principle, community, culture, and environment. Many retreats take place in extraordinary destinations. So, what responsibility do retreat leaders have to local communities they visit?
Well, they have a responsibility to remember that a destination is not simply a beautiful backdrop for our participants' transformation. That is somebody's home and culture. Okay. That means we need to think carefully about how we enter, use, represent, and benefit from a place, and how we're bringing our judgment to a place. Okay. So responsible retreat leaders should work with ethical local partners when possible, support local businesses, respect cultural traditions, again, without judgment. You have to prepare participants to behave respectfully and avoid treating local people, sacred sites, ceremonies, and landscapes as props for the retreat experience. That drives me crazy. Okay. So they should also consider environmental impact. How are the participants traveling? How is waste handled? How are local resources being strained? Is the retreat contributing to the destination in a meaningful way, or is it extracting from it? This
Okay.
is critical. This doesn't mean that every retreat has to solve every issue, but it does mean that leaders have to be conscious, humble, and respectful. Like one thing I always do is if there is a nonprofit in the area that we can donate to or help while we're there, I love doing that and I build that into the price of the retreat. So a responsible retreat leader asks, how can we be good guests here?
Great. Well, thank you so much for the covering the six principles. So now we're going to look ahead a little bit. Now that the six principles have launched, where do you hope the initiative goes from here?
Wow. Well, I hope it becomes more than a published framework that we all are just looking
Yeah.
on at the WTA website. My hope is that it becomes a living conversation and a practical tool that the industry can actually use. And I would love to see retreat leaders use the principles as a self-assessment. I would love travel advisors to use them to ask better questions before recommending retreats. And I would love to see venues use them to understand the needs of the retreat professionals. I mean, they could have someone who wants to rent space at their retreat that isn't licensed, not insured. And if I was a venue, I wouldn't want to give the space to them. That's just something to think of. Um, I would love to see educators and industry partners use them to raise the level of training and conversation across the field. So this launch is just the beginning. The real work is helping people apply these principles to their actual retreats, websites, contracts, policies, facilitation practices, partnerships, and participant care. So that's where the impact is actually going to happen.
Right. And just so everyone knows, we just put the link for the six principles in the chat, if you were wondering. So if these principles become widely embraced across the industry, what do you hope the retreat industry looks like 5 years from now?
Wow. Well, I could be dreaming. 5 years from now, I hope the retreat industry is both more expansive and more trusted. I hope retreats continue to grow because I believe they meet a real human need in these days of AI and being on computers and phones all the time. But I hope that growth is supported by clearer standards, more honest communication, better prep, and stronger professional practices. And I hope travelers know what questions to ask before booking. I hope retreat leaders understand the responsibilities they're taking on. I hope travel advisors and venues have a clearer framework for evaluating the experiences they recommend or host. And I'd love to see an industry where meaningful retreats are not judged only by beautiful photography or inspirational language, but also by the quality of the design, leadership, transparency, safety, care, and respect behind the experience. So, if the principles are widely embraced, I believe that the retreat industry can become more credible, more sustainable, and more impactful.
Well, if attendees remember just one thing from today's conversation, what do you hope it is?
Hmm. Well, I would say I hope they remember that retreats are powerful because they're built on trust. And participants trust retreat leaders with their time, their money, their well being, their travel experience, their spiritual being, their mental state, and often some very personal hopes for healing, growth, connection, or change. And that trust, from my perspective, is sacred. So the six principles are not here to make retreats less creative or spiritual or less joyful or less transformational. They're here to hold that trust more responsibly. So if we want retreats to be taken seriously as a meaningful part of wellness tourism as a whole, we have to match the beauty of the experience with the integrity of the structure behind it.
Well, let's kind of jump into the next step. So, one thing great about the initiative is it doesn't stop with just publishing the framework. The next step is helping retreat professionals begin putting these principles into practice. So, how can retreat leaders start implementing these today?
The first step is an honest self-assessment, guys. You know, you got to look at the six principles and ask practical questions. Be honest with yourself. Am I qualified for the experience I'm offering? Am I operating within the scope of my practice? Do I have the contracts, the insurance, the emergency plans and policies that I need? Is my website transparent? All of these things that I said before. My promise is clear and honest. Have I designed the experience with intention, inclusion, spaciousness, and integration? Am I making emotional safety? Am I respecting the destination and the local community? And then they can see where their weaknesses are and work on strengthening those. I mean, maybe someone needs to update their cancellation policy, right? Maybe they need better participant intake forms so they choose the right participants and not people who are not a match,
Mhm.
right? The point is not perfection. It's about awareness, education, community, and continuous improvement. I'm I've been doing this for years, and every retreat I get better and better and learn and learn. And it never stops. We're always up leveling, and I hope everyone feels the same way. I mean, retreat leadership is a practice. You
Mhm.
know, these principles give us a place to begin, a way to reflect, and a framework for doing this work with more care and integrity. That's why I love them.
Mhm. Great. Well, thank you, Sheri. So, as we discussed today, the six principles provide a practical framework for responsible retreat leadership. But we also recognize the need for a way to acknowledge professionals who are committed to putting those principles into practice. That's why the WTA is excited to officially introduce the Verified Retreat Professional program. This is another certification or training course. It's a professional recognition for qualified retreat leaders who demonstrate alignment with the six principles through a straightforward application and review process. So successful applicants receive the Verified Retreat Professional digital badge, recognition through the Wellness Tourism Association, and become part of a growing community of professionals committed to raising the standards of responsible retreats worldwide. So applications officially open today. We'd love to welcome our inaugural group of verified retreat professionals. So you can visit our website. You can make sure to stay up to date on our socials and also subscribe to our newsletters. So now we can open for a few questions. I know we did have just a couple come in beforehand. So if anybody had a question, drop them in the chat now. We'll see what we can get to. And Sheri, did you want to hit on a few of those, just a few that came through beforehand?
Yeah, whatever ones you feel
Okay.
are great questions.
Okay.
Let's hop into a couple of them.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting for some questions to come through. So one we had was, do these principles apply no matter where you are in the world?
Yes, 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 and yes.
Great. How to scan participants in order to avoid someone with such mental or emotional struggle that might be risky on a retreat.
Oh, this is a
The
good
juicy one.
question. So I would frame it as thoughtful participant screening rather than trying to diagnose or exclude people unfairly. Retreat leaders should have an intake process that helps determine whether the retreat is an appropriate fit for the participant and whether the leader is qualified to support the needs that may arise. I've turned many people away from my retreats. So it might include asking questions about medical conditions, mobility needs, dietary needs, emergency contacts and issues, mental health considerations, medications, recent life events, and whether the participant is currently under the care of a therapist or a physician or some other professional. And it's also important to be clear on your own scope of practice, as I said before. So you need to make sure that that matches there. If someone shares that they're in some kind of acute distress or recently experienced a major trauma or actively suicidal or in crisis or medically unstable or need a level of care beyond what the retreat can provide, then the responsible action is to have a pause and a private conversation and possibly recommend they seek appropriate professional support, or maybe you have another program or product you can share with them other than the retreat. So the goal is not to shame people, obviously. The goal is to protect the participant, make them feel that way when you're speaking with them. If that retreat isn't for them, share another solution. And that way you keep the integrity of your retreat container good.
Mhm. Great. Okay. What are the criteria for choosing tour operators and venues that embody these six principles and red flags to watch out for?
Well, okay. So I would say if you're choosing a vendor, a venue, you have to be very careful about looking just at the website. Sometimes you can't travel to a venue to check it out, but you can certainly do your work online at TripAdvisor and other places and read every single review. And how, more importantly, even if someone complains, how did the venue answer the complaint? So that is very important. Are they insured? You know, are they how is their kitchen? Do they take care of all different needs of your participants dietary wise? What connections do they have in the location that brings more joy to your retreat? Like maybe they have special connections for certain local people to come in, so you're supporting locally. That is really important. And do they have a doctor on staff? What happens if you need to evacuate? Do they have a good evacuation plan? Are they insured? Like there are all kinds of questions that you can ask of venues to make sure that you are in the right place. How do they deal with problems? you know all different issues, like what is their payment plan with you? You could just look at practical things like that. What happens if you don't fill all the rooms? I mean, I could go on and on and on. Like, what's their attrition policy? So like there's a million things that you can ask a venue.
Okay. What level of certification is required to be properly qualified? I'm changing careers.
Well, that really depends on what you are doing. So, as we said before, and I think I talked about that, but there's no universal certification that qualifies someone to lead every kind of retreat. So, the right qualification depends on what you are offering and the role you're playing on the retreat. However, I do think you should be educated in how to run a retreat. In other words, how do you design it thoughtfully so it is a retreat and not a workshop in a pretty place? How do you price it properly? That is important. How do you market a retreat? How do you monetize your retreat? In other words, I have a philosophy that retreats shouldn't be a one and done thing. If someone has, big change on a retreat, you should offer them something to support them afterwards. Um, and then to be educated on legal issues. Like I said, are you beholden to seller of travel or package travel law wherever you are or wherever you're going? Do you have legal forms? Do you know the legal rules? So you need to be educated to run a retreat. So there's the two sides of it. Are you qualified to do whatever you want to do on the retreat? And then are you qualified to even run and put together a retreat? So those two things, Sarah, I think are important.
Yeah. And just as a WTA member, you have access to connect with suppliers. So I,
Right, exactly. So these are vetted people.
exactly. Okay, let me see. I saw a few come through on the chat here. Sorry, now I'm losing it. It's going too fast. Are there certain review sites on vendors that you deem more reliable and ones you think are less reliable?
I would look at all of them and I compare them and I take notes. And
Okay.
if I see too many problems, then that is it for a venue. Natasha's saying, we are a newly opened venue. How can we protect ourselves from hosting retreats from unprepared leaders? Should we offer help with education and point to resources or decline them if we feel they're not ready for a successful retreat operation? Natasha, that's a great question. So the thing is I would ask, for example, do you have a list and following? A lot of people get really excited about doing a retreat. They have no following and they think that they could book 20 of your rooms and fill them, and their retreat is in 3 months. This is just an indication of lack of realistic, expectations in today's market. So I would get clear on them. You could ask, are you insured? Do you have a legal company? Do you have legal forms for your people? I would ask some of those questions. And Natasha, you are welcome to refer them to the Retreat Blueprint program anytime if you want as an affiliate. And we love to do that for you because these people need the education and the legal forms. Thank you, Natasha. You're a doll.
Let's see. Oop, I just had one. This chat's moving so quickly here. Um, how do you define the difference between retreat and workshop?
Okay, a workshop more is when you are educating people workshop style. And there's no reason to have like sessions during your retreat where you are teaching. But I think the core of it is being able to match your location with your destination so that there's something in the mythology of the place that aligns with the retreat so that activities match. So, for example, when I used to work for Don Miguel Ruiz in his business, running his retreats, he would match what he was teaching to the location. So he might talk for a little while in the morning, but in the afternoon, you went out to a sacred site and they were activities and teachings that took place outside of the classroom that made it very experiential. There might have been a shaman there. There might have been a ceremony. And so you're not in a room all day. If you're in a room all day in a pretty place, you're doing either a workshop or a live event from the stage. This is not really a retreat. It is the experiential component that has to do with the location is not present. So that's what I would say to that. Um, Jill is saying, thank you for these guidelines. I think I'm unprepared or not ready yet, and it's helpful to hear these questions. I agree, Jill. And again, we have on wanderlustentrepreneur.com, we have training programs, and the WTA also has links for that. If I don't know if you guys want to share the
Yeah.
WTA link to that. Um, let's see. Jennifer says, I think so many people are selling that retreats are easy and people are seeing this on SM social media and thinking you can sell out in 45 days. Yeah, I agree with you. That's ridiculous. Ray says, with current world events, what are your thoughts about regarding hosting international retreats? I think international retreats are fine. You need to be careful about picking your location and where it is. Right now in the United States, there's a warning about traveling anywhere in the US because people are so angry with United States citizens. So you just want to be careful about where you choose to do it. Like would I do a retreat in the middle of the Middle East right now? No. Um, let's see what else we have here. Kim says for verification, it seems that we need to submit a lot of information before we know the cost of this. I think people, Sarah, are wanting to know the cost. They need clarity on that, if you could.
And I get the links to everything here in just
Mm-hmm.
a second. And we're going to be sending out an email with all of the information as well. After we'll have the recording and all of the links and all of the information. Um,
Mm-hmm. And let's see. Kama says, I'm in Sheri's program. It's a great tool. Highly recommend. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
okay.
Retreat leaders are our thing.
Yes. Okay, well, we are at time. So just so everybody knows, we will be sending out the recording. All the information will be on the email. following up. So thank you so much, Sheri, for sharing your experience and leadership and the work you've done alongside the WTA Retreat Committee on the important initiative. Thanks for everybody who joined today. If today's conversation inspired you to learn more, we encourage you to explore the 6 principles for responsible retreats, learn more about the WTA membership, and consider taking the next step through the Responsible Retreat Verification Badge. That's a mouthful. You can follow the WTA on all the social accounts and subscribe to our newsletter. So thank you so much again, and we hope to see you at another WTA Wellness Travel Talk.
And I want to thank everyone for being here, taking this time to listen to all of this and to be thoughtful about this. I appreciate you going inward and really asking yourself these questions because it's going to uplevel our entire industry. And when we take control and uplevel our industry, then the government does not want to come in and try to govern us. So we need to do the work ourselves and take responsibility and uplift all of ourselves. So thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to share this with you and what I am really passionate about. So, and I thank the WTA for being so involved with this and so excited to help the retreat industry grow and expand. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.